In this three-part series of the Rugby Ready podcast, Gilly is going to review the 6 big rocks every player needs to focus on to maximize training. Or, as Gilly likes to put it, what juice is worth the squeeze? How are you, Gilly?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Really good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, how did you come up with this name, the 6 big rocks?
Oh, look, it's nothing new. It's nothing innovative. It's basically just the key factors I believe that we must nail. We must focus on to really become the best we can be, or to reach our potential. So yeah, there's obviously 6 areas that we want to put some energy into, these areas, to make sure that, at the end of the day, we're improving and getting better.
And what are those 6 big rocks?
Oh, look, at the moment in my mind, we're sort of sleep's obviously really important. Nutrition's just like totally underrated by a lot of people. Obviously strength work, getting strong, and injury prevention, conditioning, game understanding and skill set, and recovery. They're the 6 things that I like to focus on or formulate a program around.
Perfect. So, for our listeners today, we're going to go through the first 2 big rocks. And this is going to be a 3-part series because Gilly's got loads of information to share with us. And I have lots of questions. So, the first rock, let's go into sleep. So, why is this the first big rock?
Oh, I think it's basic physiology, really, and if we just think of the human body being an organism that needs time to learn, to recover, to adapt, to improve, and really to absorb the stresses of the day, and then the next day be better. All that happens when we sleep. And so, if we actually want to recover from the stresses of the day and give our body a chance to actually be better the next day, then sleep's absolutely the big rock.
Hmm. And what are the basics when it comes to quality sleep? How does somebody nail that?
Yeah, well, we all have different sort of sleep ability, I suppose. And in the sleep science world, it's about sleep efficiency, which is really about quality sleep versus quantity of sleep.
Hmm.
And so, some people can sleep a long time, but it be really average, restless sleep. Whereas some people can get the really deep quality sleep we want in a short period of time. So really, it's about understanding how you sleep, and what are the things that help you sleep better. Got a player at the moment who is struggling to get deep sleep, and just so everyone understands, there's different parts of our sleep cycle. There's our REM sleep, rapid eye movement type sleep. There's our deep sleep, and another two really quality parts of our sleep that we want to get as much of as we can. And then there's a sleep where we're just laying there and the body's resting, but that's not really the quality stuff that we want. So I know myself, I look at my sleep most days just to check in with how I went, and then I'll reflect on whether I was a bit more restless last night because of what I did before I went to bed, or whether I have slept better and deeper because of my exercise or my training load the day before, or am I sleeping worse because I'm a bit stressed, or I'm too much time in front of my computer. And I think it's just another part of understanding, you and how you function, but then also how you recover through sleep.
That's interesting. And something that came up for me too that was a really cool learning lesson was doing a sleep test. So I went to a sleep clinic. I went through my doctor. My wife has complained over and over and over again about my snoring, and I never thought it was a really big deal until I saw the doctor, and he goes, "Yeah, well, you have high blood pressure, which is weird because you're so active. You eat well, and based on what you're saying about your sleep, let's get you tested for sleep apnea." So I thought, like, there's no way I could have that, right? And then sure enough, I did the sleep test and I hold my breath. What did they say? 26 times every hour for 10 seconds every time. And so my sleep is just terrible. And I think for listeners out there, that's something too that like if you've ever had someone tell you you sleep like or you snore like crazy, like maybe worth getting checked out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, Tyler.
yeah.
Like that's it's funny that you have that issue too, because I snore occasionally, but mine's because I broke my nose playing rugby and my septum's sort of smashed to one side. So if I lay on my left hand side of my body, I snore, but if I lay on my right, I'm fine. So I've figured that out as well, and a few kicks in the back from my wife. But no, I think understanding how you sleep and how to get more sleep is pretty important for all of us.
So some of the basics then when it comes to say getting that deep sleep and more REM sleep, would that be like, control the temperature in your room? Do you use things like eye shades, white noise? What do you do to
Yeah,
maximize your
hey,
sleep?
look, there's lots of things that you can do, and again, I love to encourage people to experiment with what works for them.
Mm,
Not just when it comes to sleep, mate, but just when anything in life. Like everyone reacts differently to different things. So for me, if I'm in a room that's not really dark, then I need eye shades.
mhm,
Um, if there's a little bit of sort of noise, and it could be, if I'm in a hotel and there's traffic lights, five floors down, and there's a beeping or something, then I need, or an elevator outside my room, then I need some earplugs. So it depends on my environment as to what I need to sleep better. Um, Big thing for me, probably the worst thing for me is screen time, and so you've just got to, for me, I've got to totally get away from screens, whether they're iPads, computers, phones. Having a period of probably an hour of no screen time. So the deep power hour is what people call it, where you're sort of getting away from that screen. The other thing that I think is really important is like a brain dump. You like everyone's got a busy mind, and sometimes people can't sleep because their head hits the pillow, and then the old noggin just keeps tuning over with what I've got to do tomorrow, or what someone said to me today, or what I've got coming up in a couple of weeks, and my brain starts figuring stuff out, and I just can't stop it. So for me, I just need to write down my day, plan my next day, write down what I'm doing tomorrow. I do that sort of before dinner or just after dinner, and all of a sudden I've got it out of my head, and so my brain's more quiet. And I think that's a nice thing to do for busy people or people trying to achieve a lot in their day, is to get it out of their head onto a bit of paper or onto your phone or onto a checklist, and that will help you switch off when your head does hit the pillow. um, I think room temperature is important, but again, it depends on the individual. I like cool rooms, but if it's too cool, because I've got a blocked nose, I breathe through my mouth, and then I get a sore throat. So sort of the temperature's got to be right for me, my sleeping, but also for my breathing, so I don't get sort of air conditioning sort of throat going on. So I think it's just a matter of experimenting, and getting those things right. For yourself really, and figuring out what does and doesn't work. But screen time's a big no for probably 90% of us.
mm. Have you ever played around with blue light blocking glasses?
No, I haven't personally.
Mhm.
And obviously that's where the Kindles and stuff are really good
Mm,
when
yeah.
it comes to screens. Like they've removed the blue light exposure or reduced it significantly at least. So I haven't tried them because I haven't had a problem where I've needed to. So I think if people are looking for other solutions, it's definitely worth experimenting. The literature is pretty positive around the effectiveness of those blockers.
Cool. Is there anything like say you have someone who is totally nailing the sleep basics, they have a really good routine down, but they're looking to maximize their sleep. Like is there anything you can do outside of the basics or is it pretty much just stick to what you just said?
Well, I think that the key thing is probably understanding how much you need and when you need it. Because another part to help you sleep better is a regular sleep wake time. Routine is important. Your body, the body develops rhythms, and your habits dictate when you go to sleep and therefore when you wake. I've got a mate of mine, actually. He cracks me up. He wakes up at sort of 5:30 every morning. Doesn't matter what he's done, how much sleep he's had, he wakes up at 5:30. And I always say to him, I don't know how you do that. Like, why do you wake up so early? He said, oh, my body's finished. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, oh, my body's finished sleeping. I said, okay. Um, so it's pretty simple stuff, but he's just got a routine. That's what time he wakes up every day to go to work. So regardless what time he goes to bed. Whereas me, if I go to bed late, I've still got to get my 8 or 9 hours. So I need
Yeah.
to get later. And I think that understanding your own need for sleep, like I think if I'm working with athletes that are training really hard, and they're getting good sleep at night, it doesn't mean they still can't get benefit from more sleep by having a nap in the afternoon. So I think naps are really important. I mean, there's lots of literature that show that if we can get most people to have another 30 minutes of sleep,
Mhm.
whether that's as a nap or through extending their night sleep, then there's huge benefits. So most of us don't get enough sleep, is what I'd say. So regardless of how amazing you think you are at sleeping, the more the better. The more the better. Try and add more to it, especially if you're busy or training really hard. You want to get the most adaptation or the most recovery and sleep more. And you just got to put lots of energy into getting more and more sleep. Plan for it.
That's really useful. So say like, an 8-hour sleep is something that most people can hit, right? If you're structured with your time. And if you're gonna plan that afternoon nap, like is 30 minutes the most amount of time you want to nap for? Is it okay to nap longer?
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff out there around that napping side of things. Like some people have a little nap and wake up feeling horrible. And I've also heard of some people having a coffee before they have their nap.
Hmm.
So when they wake up, the coffee's just come through, the caffeine's just hitting them, and they all of a sudden feel wide awake again. I'm not sure about that myself, but I mean, I think even just laying horizontal and switching off for 20 to 30 minutes is hugely valuable. Um, for busy people or people training hard or people just pushing the boundaries. Um, so I think you're sort of only one sort of sleep cycle. So generally they recommend 20 to 30 minutes. So I'll always set an alarm. I don't want to get any more than that personally, and I wouldn't recommend getting any more than that, because if you sleep too long in that nap, then what you'll do is you end up struggling to go to sleep that night. So remember, it's just a little bonus sleep. It's a bonus nap. And so if you sleep longer than that, great. But when you go to bed that night, you'll be laying there and not being able to go to sleep because you're not tired. Okay, so again, experiment. But for me, I'll when I put my head on the pillow for a nap, just before I put my head on the pillow, I put my alarm on for 30 minutes later, and it might take me 10 minutes to go to sleep. 20-minute nap, happy days. Ironically, sometimes on my nap is about 4 minutes long.
If
Like
you
I'll
lay
lay
there and
down.
think like for 26 minutes?
No, I'll lay down and I'll lay down for 10 minutes and I'll fall asleep and I'll wake up after 15 minutes of laying down.
Hmm.
It means I've only had 4 or 5 minutes sleep, but that's all my body obviously wanted or needed. And I've woken up and I'm going, okay, cool, get into it. So and other days, my alarm will wake me up. Um, so again, experiment. Don't have too much, but extending our sleep will pay big dividends down the track.
That's really cool, and it's funny you say that. One of our rugby ready athletes, he has like a crazy schedule. He was going to the gym in the morning, then he had a very physical job that he do all day, and then he would do his rugby training at night. And I remember I asked him one day, I was like, "Hey, like, how are you doing with your sleep and your recovery?" And he goes, "Oh, I eat my lunch super fast, and I have a nap every day at lunch, and everybody laughs at me." But then he wakes up and he's good to go. And I thought, like, wow, that's super cool. Like, for people out there that are busy who might think, oh, napping isn't realistic. If you have a lunch hour and you can like go to your car or you can be alone in the lunchroom, like maximize that time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was teaching full time, I used to put a sign outside my office door, "Do not disturb," and I'd have a quick bite to eat, and I'd lay down on my floor. This is when I had my first daughter, tired, sleep deprived. Scoff my lunch down, have a sleep on the floor of my office. Everyone thought I was in there on a phone call or something, but no. Sometimes you just got to get what you can get when you can get it.
What I have to look forward to soon.
Absolutely, mate.
So are there any common mistakes or we'll say bad habits outside of using screens before bed that you see people make with when it comes to say sleep hygiene?
Oh, I don't think I see mistakes, but obviously there's lots of little things that people can do to I suppose improve their sleep efficiency. And simple things like if you wake up in the middle of the night and you go to the toilet, try not to turn lights on.
Mhm.
Try not to turn lights on because all of a sudden the lights wake you up a little bit, and then you might go back to bed and struggle to go back to sleep. Okay, so that's a real easy one. Um, I think hydration is important, and I know you and I'll talk about this later, I'm sure. But um, for myself, I get thirsty if I'm training lots, and if I drink too much after sort of 5 p.m., I'll get up and go to the toilet about 4 times up through the night. And so that impacts my sleep quality by going to the toilet too much because I'm too hydrated. And so I think getting that balance right of nailing your hydration, but not drinking too much too late in the day,
Mhm.
because then you go to the toilet too often. And the other thing, and is probably understanding that when you're about to go to your room to go to bed, try to not be thinking about tomorrow or all these things that you've got to get done. Or, man, I can't wait to talk to my partner about tomorrow or a week's time and planning a holiday and all those things because it just gets the mind busy again. And so you've really got to spend that hour before going to bed to just chill, relax. For me, that's watching a movie or watching some TV or reading a book. It's not sitting there, um, you know, booking flights or writing a shopping list or doing any of that stuff. I'm trying to quieten my brain down, not sort of get it going. Okay,
Mhm.
so I think there's a few little things there. But yeah, as I said earlier, the screen times are key nowadays. Especially for kids. That most kids go to their room, they get sent to their room to go to bed, and most kids, teenagers, will end up laying in bed for 3 hours talking to their mates, and then can't sleep very well. Don't know why they're not sleeping very well, not getting enough sleep. Well, it's because the screen time's big at the wrong time of the day, and then they can't sleep very well. So yeah, screen time's a biggie.
And what are your thoughts on caffeine? Because I mean, obviously, like an afternoon pick me up's always great. But is there really a cutoff time? You say you would go to bed at 10 p.m. Like, how do I work backwards to know when the last coffee of the day should be?
Well, I think it depends. You just got to experiment. Like I know that if I have a coffee at sort of 4 or 5 o'clock, and it doesn't matter whether it's instant coffee or real coffee. Normally, I take a bit longer to go to sleep.
Hmm.
Um, if I'm knackered from training or from working or from both, I could probably have coffee an hour before I go to bed and have no problem. So it sort of depends, I think, on the person. Some people have a coffee after lunchtime and they don't sleep very well. So everyone's different, probably based on amount of coffee you do have, the type of coffee you have, but also how tired or fatigued you are, and therefore how easy it's going to be to go to sleep. So, again, experiment, figure out what works for you. If you have a night where you struggle to get to sleep, maybe reflect on when you last had a coffee. But yeah, that's just another thing that you need to throw into the mix when trying to clean your sleep up.
Yeah, that's really good. And something too for coffee drinkers out there to be aware of. Like my friend owns a cafe nearby, and it's interesting when you see the difference between the caffeine content and say a drip coffee compared to an espresso. Like the more roasted that bean is, the less caffeine there is in it. So like when you have like a drip coffee, here like in Canada and the US, it's really common to have like a big honking coffee pot, right? So, you might knock back 2 or 3 of those cups in a day, and you just have a ton of caffeine thinking that you're having less than espresso, but you're actually having like, 2 or 3 times more.
Yeah, no, that stuff's pretty nasty. Hey, that's full of the goodness.
Yeah, it's the good stuff, man. It's the rocket fuel. Cool. So let's look at rock number 2, nutrition. So a big one. And I'd like to point out to our listeners that on Gilly's list, sleep and nutrition show up on your list even before training. So why is that?
Well, I think Yeah, I think if before we nail our training program, before we work hard, you need to have these things in place. Otherwise, you're either going to get sick or hurt or just not adapt like you could. And so this is almost like cleaning things up before we go and do the mahi. Um, and most people enjoy training nowadays, more so than maybe when I started. A lot of people just love working hard. And a phrase we like to use uh, in my team at the moment is it's easy to sweat. Okay, it's really easy to sweat. It's easy to go and work hard. It's easy to go lift weights. It's easy to go and run hard. What's not easy is all the little things that make that hard work pay off. And sleep and nutrition are those two of those things. If you train like an absolute champion, but you sleep poorly and you eat poorly, then you'll make no adaptations. All you'll do is get tired and, like I said, sick or injured. So let's sort nutrition and sleep out first, and then let's do the mahi.
So for people listening, like really let that hit home because I know I've seen a lot of athletes skip that, right? They skip that step, the nutrition step, and you watch their diet and you kind of, you do the math on how much energy is going out versus how much going is coming in and then the food quality. And it's with a little bit of effort, like we have resources for people like our real food ebook and things like that. But with a little bit of effort and education, what Gilly's saying is you can really maximize your training. So do not skip that step. Now, what are the basics? Like if you were going to give sort of the basics to any rugby player that are easy for them to understand and implement, what are they?
Yeah, well, like I think the basics. Well, the basics. It's not that complicated. Again, just like sleep, just like training. It's we don't need to overcomplicate things because um, if we nail the basics, then 90% of the hard stuff you've got sorted. And for me, the basics probably real food first. Okay, so real um, fresh food first. Simple as that. Um, and for me, eat. I always say white dull food, but eat carbohydrate um, based on your energy expenditure. Okay, so fuel the machine based on what the machine's doing. Okay, so that's as simple as energy in, energy out. Um, so there's all these diets and all these fads and all these things out there, but that is the rule. That is the most important thing is what's being put out, what's being burned, we must put in. Okay. And it all depends on your goals and things. I know that. But so real fresh food first. Um, eat your white or carbohydrate dense food based on your activity level. Um, and I suppose be extremely planned and organized so that you don't have to miss food or eat poor quality food because you're disorganized. So organization is important. Clean, real, fresh produce or food. Reduce the white dull stuff based on energy output. And the last thing for me is, again, it's a lot of people will know this, but eat a rainbow. So eat lots of different colored food. And I don't mean artificially colored food. I mean real colored food.
So no Fruit Loops then.
No Fruit Loops. So your plate at every breakfast, at every meal, including breakfast, should have some color in it. You know,
Yeah.
and the simple reason being that the color represents different vitamins and minerals and nutrients that your body actually needs.
Mhm.
All the white dull crap, it's got lots of energy in it, but there's no nutrients in there. There's nothing in there that's good for you other than fuel. Okay, so load the plate up with color and then fuel as needed.
And you'd be surprised too, like if you're listening and you don't eat a lot of vegetables, it's quite filling. Like if you really say you make yourself like a chicken stir fry mainly with veggies, it's amazing how filling that meal is. And
Totally,
it's so fibrous, right?
totally. Like you can fill up on the goodness instead of filling up on the crap. Totally.
Yeah. So what about Gilly, what about protein? Like when you think about, the function of the food mainly, to build and maintain lean mass, how should players go about structuring their plate with lean protein sources?
Oh, look, the basic recommendations there are probably that you need protein 4, 5, 6 times a day.
Hmm.
20 to 30 grams based on your goals. And I'm not sure what it's like in America and Canada, but I know that in New Zealand, Australia, and probably the UK, for example, very traditional carbohydrate loaded breakfast. Whether that's toast or muesli or cereal, or it's probably the same up where you are, but that's really traditional. And because it's easy, and it's because what we've always done, but there's no protein in any of that. And if we wanted to, if our body is made of protein, and the muscle we are trying to create to become good rugby players is protein, then we need to eat protein often. So the best protein for breakfast is typically eggs, isn't it? It's pretty easy to slip some eggs into your day. And so I think it's just a matter of trying to sprinkle protein through your day. And to do that, you have to be planned, because again, what's your traditional lunch? Traditional lunch down where I am is sandwiches, you know, and all of a sudden a sandwich with what in it? Well, not much. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden we've had breakfast, we've had lunch before we've had much protein. Okay, and most of us get protein at dinner time.
Hmm.
Okay, so we need to be thinking, how do we get protein through the day? Best way is to be organised and planned. Is that cans of tuna? Is that protein supplements? Is that eggs? Is that boiled eggs in your lunchbox? Is
Hmm.
that, how do we get protein in the afternoon snack? Um, but I think the original message was um, real food first, and so I'd always be looking for, the eggs and the chicken breast and the cans of tuna before I went with the protein powder. The
Hmm.
protein powder is the thing that I would put in when the other things are too hard.
Well, and that is right. Like that's where the word comes from, supplement, to supplement the diet, right? We want to get as much as you can from whole food sources. And when you think about that too, like when I started tracking my nutrition using my fitness pal, what became really interesting too, like you commented on like the standard North American diet, like you're totally right. It's super high in carbohydrate and also super high in fat, because you're also going to get, and it's not that these foods are good or bad, but like you're going to get, okay, so your eggs, maybe fried in butter, then you're going to do it with bacon and maybe some sausages. And then you're also going to put butter on your toast. And then you do the math on this meal, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's no wonder I'm having such a hard time maintaining like a lean frame. I've
Oh,
just basically eaten like this calorie bomb,
yeah, absolutely,
you know?
absolutely. And it's one of those things where, um, I think if you were an endurance athlete and you were exercising for 6 hours a day, then that carbohydrate load is probably okay,
Mhm.
for most people. But not many people that eat a diet like that have that energy expenditure. So, but we are trying to build muscle. We're trying to keep lean muscle on our frame, and so that's what our diet needs to reflect. Yeah, no, you're bang on, and it's really traditional for most cultures to have a carbohydrate dense diet,
Mhm.
not enough vitamins and minerals, not enough color, and the only protein hit typically coming at night time. Okay, so we've all got a lot of work to do there, but it's not that hard to do if you're organized, and or you adjust and are aware you need to change some habits, because most of the things we do are based on habits and what we were taught as a kid, and it's just what we do. So
Yeah,
change.
absolutely. And like what you said with the planning too, like what we started doing in our household, which made the world of difference, was we don't even necessarily plan out the whole week, because we don't want to sit and do that, like set the time aside to do that. But 2 to 3 days. What do I want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Right? Oh, sweet. Let's actually go to the store and buy that stuff. And then it's like making that list, like that brain dump list. It's the same thing with your nutrition. It takes actually very little time and preparation.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
today,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm working on my laptop and I could go to the fridge, pull out a pre-made lunch with veggies, lean protein, and a little bit of carbs, and I was good to go. But in the past, that would have been exactly where it's like, oh man, I don't have anything made. Do I run to Subway? What do I do? Right. And it's just so makes life so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes it easier, makes it more quality and happy days.
So, like, let's talk about the difference then between fueling for, say, a club player who's training, at their local club twice a week, game on Saturday, and they might go to the gym a couple days a week, versus someone who's playing more competitive level rugby. They have more time spent training throughout the week. What is the differences in fueling for those two athletes?
Well, I touched on it earlier. It just comes down to output, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Typically, if you're training more, then you need to eat more. Um, because we are not wanting to be in calorie deficit unless we are trying to lose body fat or body weight. Um, and so we've got to fuel for our activity levels. So if we are training 8 hours a week versus 4 hours a week, then the person that's doing more will need to eat more food to fuel that activity. And it's as simple as that. Um, and again, experiment with yourself. If you feel like you are low in energy, not making the gains you want physically, storing a little bit around the middle, like, well, reflect on your nutrition. Are you eating enough at the right times around the activity? And there are some schools of thought out there that your body composition is a reflection of your nutrition 2 weeks prior, you know, um, because it doesn't happen overnight. We have to be constantly reflecting on what it is we're eating, when we're eating it, and how we're feeling around it. Because I know myself, I know when I'm not eating enough based on the exercise I'm doing, because I get tired and grumpy, and I maybe don't feel so good in the next training session. So that's a clear sign to me that I'm not fueling for what I'm trying to achieve. Um, Likewise, if I'm putting weight on, bad weight on, for the activity I'm doing and the nutrition that I'm putting into my body, then typically something's not in balance. So yeah, you just got to keep thinking fuel for your activity, and whether that's lots of gym work where you're needing more protein, lots of running, you need more carbohydrate, lots of both, you needing more of both. And the pro athletes who are pretty much training 3 or 4 hours a day in rugby at least, eat a lot more in that environment than if they were at home training for 1 hour a day. Okay, because they just got to fuel the machine.
Yeah, I like that. Matching that energy expenditure.
Well,
So,
it's the best way to look at it, Tyler, is like we're like a car, like we're like a car, and I like using the analogy where, if our car sits in the garage, before we take it for a drive, do we fill it up with gas if it's already full? No. But if we go for a big drive and come back and on the way home look at the dial and go, shit, there's not much fuel in the tank, I better fill it up before I park it in the garage at night so I can go for another drive the next day. Like our body's just like a car. We should fuel it for the activity it's doing, and not over fuel it if it's sitting in the garage.
love that. So for the person who has this fueling dialed in, right? Like they're matching their movement, they're nailing the basics of real food. Are there supplements you would recommend to get like that extra 1% boost in their training?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like supplements, real food first. Supplements are exactly that. They're the sprinkling on top. They're the salt and pepper on your steak. um, and I think that the supplement world is full of amazingly complicated terms and chemicals and products, and obviously of varying quality. Um, but for me personally, I would be recommending a really good, clean protein,
Mhm.
um, that is really low in carbohydrates. So for me, and this is just for someone who's pretty sorted, body comp is good, body weight is good. So it's a nice way to get some protein in if I can't have a boiled egg or two, or a chicken breast, or a can of tuna. So a nice clean um, protein powder with varying sources of protein, so that we're sort of hitting the whole spectrum of fast absorption, slow absorption. So protein's one. Creatine is still a very effective product. Um,
Mhm.
and if we think of creatine being the fuel for that maximal short duration effort that's stored in our muscle, then making sure we've got enough of that and stored in our system is important. So cycling creatine is really good, and especially because it has a huge performance benefit. Okay, and that's been known for decades. So supplementing creatine and cycling it in and out of your program is important. Um, I think there's some products out there that are really effective in helping sleep. So zinc and magnesium supplementation is really good for helping sleep. Um, and actually, some of the magnesium out has been shown to maybe enhance some muscle function and muscle health. So I think zinc and magnesium supplementation not bad. Fish oils, omegas out there. Some reasonable information on reducing inflammation and helping with just good body function is getting omegas into our diet. So if you're not eating enough fish, then chuck some omegas in. But again, we've been doing some omega testing, and some people have got plenty of omega in their diet through fish, and some people don't. So we supplement those that don't. And then the last thing, which is probably I don't think it's debatable, but people have mixed views on it, is a pre-workout.
Mm.
Like if someone's struggling with energy because they're training really hard and there's a key session coming up in the afternoon and they've just had a nap and a bit lethargic, it's sort of like, oh man, we need to hit some numbers this afternoon, but I'm just not feeling it at the moment. Then a decent pre-workout with some beta alanine, some caffeine and creatine in it is I think very effective when required. Not something you need at every workout, but in the workouts where you feel like you need a bit of a hit, then can allow you to get a lot more out of your session than cruising through it because you're knackered. So I think they're probably the big rocks at the moment in terms of supplementation from me.
So just so all the bros out there who heard that, like, we want to make it clear, pre-workout, a pre-workout supplement you really only want to use when you need to go really high on the intensity scale, right? When you're a little bit tired. It's not like, in your deload week, you're still hitting that pre-workout.
Yeah, no, I think it's totally, like, I think it's about using it when you need to use it.
Hmm.
And I mean, some pre-workouts have beta alanine and creatine in them, and I know some of ours do. And that's a way of us getting beta alanine and creatine into the body regularly.
Hmm.
Is is little and often through the week. Um, and so, if you're using that pre-workout a couple of times a week, then that helps get that into the system. But I think for me, it is very much a use it when you need it, not all the time. And you shouldn't need it all the time because you should be motivated to hit some big numbers, not needing a chemical to help you get there.
Like that. So you might have covered this earlier, but I'm interested to know what happens to the body when there is an inadequate amount of fuel in it. So when you put it under some stressful training, right? You do this for a period of time, maybe you're under fueling. What happens?
Well, if you're under fueling, it's pretty simple because what you're gonna do is generally you become catabolic. Okay, you'll be starting to um, eat into protein stores and muscle rather than build it. Okay,
Mhm.
um, that's the first thing. You'll also have insufficient energy to actually train to the level you want or need to train at, and so then you'll get no benefit from that session because you haven't hit the numbers you needed to hit because you've got no energy in the tank. Okay, so I think training quality suffers. I think your energy consumption gets diverted away from using fuel you've got stored to actually using tissue that you need. Um, so that's two things. And I think just overall, because of that, overall your adaptations and your improvements will not be going the right direction. Um, and then we start getting things like we start getting sick, tired, um, and can produce some sort of overtrained symptoms, where mood and even not sleeping well. So there's lots of um, I suppose disadvantages of underfueling, and this is why trying to improve body composition and train hard at the same time becomes a bit of a battle, because we're trying to train really well, but we're trying to improve our body composition. And ironically, if you just trained really well and nailed your nutrition, then your nutrition should be just that tad under what you're burning, so that you are session upon session improving your body composition, because you're actually got enough fuel to train hard, but not enough fuel to store excess. Okay.
Mm.
And so that balance is quite hard to achieve. And that's where, people not quite nailing their nutrition, it becomes I always say, you can't out train a shit diet. Okay. You can't, doesn't matter how hard you train, if your nutrition is not on point, you'll either underperform, or you won't adapt how you need to adapt, or you won't be able to train as hard as you need to be able to train. And
Hmm.
so what does that look like? It looks like a lethargic performance on the park, because all you've been doing is you've been in deficit all week, been training crap, trying to lose weight, and you end up running around like you got lead in your feet. So the balance is important.
Well, that's really great information for somebody who's, say, looking to make that body composition change, who has been under eating. I hope you really listen to that and take that in. What about body types though? Like when you look at, say, you got your ectos, your mesos, and your endomorphs. Does that really come into fueling, or do they still fall under the same rules, or yeah, the rules that you kind of just laid out for us?
Well, I think the general rule of thumb is the same.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't matter your body type. It just means that's how you're going to likely adapt to the training that you're going through. A mesomorph, a traditional mesomorph, is just probably needs to look at weights to gain muscle. you know, um, and likewise, the other end of the spectrum, the endomorph, it's sort of like, well, nutrition becomes something that's really important, but regardless of the weights and the endurance or conditioning that might be done, their body's still going to be similar on that scale, but typically we're trying to become more mesomorph in rugby for most people. Um, and all that is more muscular, lean muscle that is fast, strong, powerful, and fit and lean. So we're all trying to slide our own body type up that sort of scale, to become lean, big, and strong.
Yeah, that ideal body type. So does hydration fall under the nutrition banner, or is that sort of a category all on its own?
Oh, no, I think it falls into nutrition for sure. It's just one of those things that, again, you need a fuel for the activity that you're doing and for the sweat rate that you have. Like I'm a horrendous sweater. Like I think I lose about 4 liters an hour on my bike. Um,
Wow.
and so I do a decent bike session, and I'm chewing through the water. There's puddles all around me, so I know my intake has to match what I'm losing in my session. And there's lots of people like that, and there's lots of people that don't sweat much. But I think that hydration piece is really important, and the easiest way to figure it out is just check your urine, make sure your urine's clear. If it's yellow or a dark yellow, then you need to just get some fluid, and fluid being water, ideally. If you're thirsty, you typically um, need to hydrate a bit more. Something that ironically is, a lot of people who say they're hungry, um, have mixed the message the body's trying to give them. Most people that say, "Gee, I'm hungry," they just need a glass of water. Okay, so don't misinterpret the thirst message the body's giving you for hungry message. We often eat when we don't need to eat. We eat when we should be drinking fluid. So if in doubt, drink water.
Billy, it's funny. You sound like my dad. He always used to go, well, I'd go, Dad, I'm hungry. Well, have a glass of water. Like, no, I'm hungry, right?
Totally.
But
And
then,
absolutely.
you have the glass of water. It says, Dad, I'm still hungry. Well, have an apple. Like, oh, I don't want an apple.
Yeah, no, it's true. Most people. I know that when I was doing my PhD, I thought I had a problem with caffeine. I thought I was drinking way too much coffee, and I just thought I'd developed the habit. But my body was just non-stop thirsty, so I just moved the coffee cup away and put a water bottle there, and it was the same. I was just actually thirsty.
Yeah.
Or I was drinking coffee because I thought I needed coffee, but no, my body just wanted water. And so I think again, it just shows you that we're all, n equals one. We're a single organism that has different needs, different routines and habits and requirements. And we just got to try and figure it out. What works for us or what works for me won't work for any of you guys or girls. We got to be encouraged to experiment and understand what works for us.
Well, Gilly's just done an excellent job covering the first two big rocks. And we're going to finish this episode off with an Ask Gilly. So, Lauren.
What we got?
Yeah, we got a really good question this week. Lauren sent us a question on Instagram. What exercises can I do to improve my kicking power?
Oh, okay. That's a goodie. Interesting. Kicking power obviously involves, it's quite a complex movement. And it depends on the sort of kick we're talking about here, Lauren. But if it was a drop kick versus a place kick versus a punt, they all required slightly different movements, but at the end of the day, similar muscles and joints. So biggest thing for me would be making sure that our stance leg or our weight bearing leg is obviously extremely strong, because we want to plant that hard. And then really there's an element of rotation through the middle, and a lot of adductor, hip flexor, quad involvement. Okay. If we think of the kick cycle being some leg extension and some hip extension, then they're the key things that we need to get strong. So a lot of cable work, single leg cable work, and all ranges of movement. So a four-way cable is a really good exercise to do, where we're flexing the hip, we're extending the hip, we're extending the knee, and really trying to focus on getting strong through that rotation. And the last thing is core, is getting your pillar or your trunk really strong, because if we're trying to get some transfer through to the ball from rotation of the upper body, we don't want to lose anything through our middle. Okay, so any rotation occurs in the top of the body, we want to go straight through to the bottom of the body to end up on the ball. And obviously there's a force element of creating force to bring that kicking leg through, but then there's a speed element. The ball will fly further if I'm contacted is hit with a high speed foot. And so trying to get that foot really coming through real fast is the key, and it's at the end of the lever. So trying to understand and figure out how to get that lever coming through faster is really, really important. So strengthen the hip, strengthen the knee, strengthen the lower core so that any rotation is transferred. At the end of the day, work on speed of the foot. Don't know if that helps, but it's quite complicated, but that'd be where I'd start.
Oh, no, that's a great answer. Well, thanks as always, Gilly, for your time. This has been a great episode.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Tyler. As always, love it. Love chatting to you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Rugby Ready podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we appreciate your support. Please subscribe to the pod, leave us a review, and send us your questions on the Ask Gilly web form for our next episode.